Welcome to On the Table with Ashley. This is our food and connection series that explores the many ways people create connection through food, from community gardens and classrooms to dinner tables across the world. The series highlights stories of gathering nourishment, memory, and care. Through insightful conversations with experts from all walks of life, the vulnerable conversations shared over dinner, the scents and recipes that carry memories of home, and the grassroots efforts communities make to combat food insecurity and support one another. Through these conversations, we examine how food unites people, preserves culture, conjures memory, and creates identities. Ultimately, the series reveals the profound role food plays in nearly every human experience. Our guest today is Katy Syme. Katy graduated with a degree in psychology before moving to New York to pursue a modeling career in print and video media. In 2023, Katy launched Symeski Made Dinner, a supper club designed to bring strangers together over family-style meals and meaningful conversation. Since then, she's hosted over 100 guests and expanded to private dinners, large parties, and community events. Her easygoing approach to hosting has been featured in Canvas Rebel magazine and other publications. Enjoy.
Katy Syme, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so looking forward to talking about the supper clubs that you've created and all of the permutations, but specifically the goal of this series is to talk about food and gathering. And I feel like what you've created is such a perfect manifestation of all the goodness that I want people to re-find. So I always love to start hearing a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of kid you were.
Oh, that's a great question. I grew up in England. I am commonly mistaken for being Australian because I live in America, and I guess it sounds the same. But I grew up in England. I grew up in the south of England, close to London. I've been in the States for 12 years. What kind of kid was I? I think I was a bit of a lunatic. I mean, I'm the youngest of three, and that kind of affords you like more freedom perhaps than like the first child. They've done it twice over, there's so there was a little chaos with the three of us. I think honestly, like I've asked my parents this before because I was like, was I nervous? Was I as anxious as I am now? Like, did I care this deeply about everything? And they were like, yeah. Yep, you applied yourself in that like tenacious way, and that sometimes that made me like, I was so uptight about timing. And like, it's hilarious that I've kind of channeled it into this elaborate, overachieving dinner party that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But yeah, I also was kind of like an observer in a way, I think. Again, being like the youngest of three, there's always a lot going on. And I was interested in people. I think that's kind of maybe where it comes from, is that there was a lot to have a look at and be interested in. And I've remained an observer of people and I guess kind of harnessed that organic curiosity in others.
I wanted to ask you where you learned about hospitality. Was that your parents or other people in your family? And also, like, how important was food a part of your upbringing?
I mean, I was born a hungry, hungry girl, I'm a hungry hippo all the time. No stranger to a snack. Did I learn it from my parents? Not really. My family is big. My extended family is big. I grew up and my great-grandparents were alive on my mother's side. So like, if we had a family gathering at that level, it was 120 people. I had the experience of parties, and I think I liked that feeling a lot. My grandma was like an excellent cook and an excellent host. I do remember that being foundational. We ate as a family a lot. My mum was a great cook. But yeah, I think I liked the feeling. I liked the feeling of what being satisfied by food and the pleasure of being in the company of people and like that warm atmosphere where everybody's chatting and happy, and I liked that, and I think I liked that from being young, and I just figured out how to create that for myself.
So let's talk about that. So I believe it was COVID when you started this. Was there this like spark moment idea? I want to have a supper club. I want to cook for strangers. Tell us about how that came about.
You like yes and no. So I guess all through my life as like an adult, I'm using quotation marks because, we're saying like from like living independently of my parents, like being like 20 and living with friends, both in London and then in New York, there was a desire to host. And when I got to New York, I'm not really sure where it came from, but I couldn't let go of this idea of like having a food establishment. We moved into an apartment for girls, and it was like a gorgeous apartment upstairs and then an unfinished basement. And in the unfinished basement is like this little kitchenette and a little bathroom. And I was like, well, this is obviously just begging to be a secret restaurant, and I'll have no licenses and I'll just pack loads of people in and we'll do one turn. And I guess like being in the city, I was meeting people who were working in food and hospitality, and that seemed like really fun and really interesting and exciting. And so it was kind of like I had a desire for the thing all along the way. The iteration of that continued to evolve in my mind, and I never really actioned it. And then I guess with the pandemic happening, came the need for the connection, right? Suddenly it was like, oh, this isn't just about like, this would be fun. I was like, I need more people. I have this sense where people are leaving the city, people are moving on with their lives. It was a big like turning point for so many people to kind of take a left turn from the track that they'd been on. And that felt like loss at the time. I remember feeling quite worried that I would be alone and that I wouldn't have the connection that I'd spent a lot of years building. I think when you live away from your family of origin, the stakes are higher for how reliable your connections are because obvious reasons. And so in that, there had always been this kind of through line of this is something that I want to do with my life maybe, or this is something I'm interested in. Then there was the aha moment. So I had been cooking and I had an Instagram and I was working at the time as a model and I was freelance, but you see them once a year or once every 2 years and they follow you on Instagram. And so people are watching me cook. And then I'd go on set with them and they'd be like, oh my God, I want to come to a dinner. And I'd be like, okay, great. But who do you go with? Like, you want to come to my house for dinner? Now we're on a weird date. Like, I don't want that. That's right. So I'm like trying to scrape together who goes with who and what, And the aha moment was like, oh, all of those random one-off 1-2 people go together for a dinner party. And I was like, that's the idea. I'm going to do it. And so I put up on the Instagram and I said, if you've said to me you want to come to a dinner party, send me a DM and I'm going to put you all together and it'll be a fun night. And like 80 people responded to this. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, make it stop. It was like completely overwhelming. Like the response was completely overwhelming. I had not planned past having a few hairstylists in my living room, And I was like, okay, well, this is kind of what you wished for, This is the non-traditional, non-restaurant food idea that you've wanted all your life. So I ran with it.
So do you think if we hadn't had COVID, you would never have done this?
Wow, I've never thought about that. You never think about the sliding door options, do you? Unless you're forced to. But who knows?
And maybe it doesn't matter because it did happen, it is happening. But sometimes I like to think about that because there are often silver linings. And sometimes it's just important to note, like, good things come out of bad things, right? And this is a good thing that came out of a bad thing in a dark place or a dark time for all of us. So, okay, so you're cooking during COVID, which a lot of us did. And you have an Instagram, you send out this, DM me, you get 80 people. Okay, what happens next?
I write a list. Okay, I wrote a list on a Word document and just of all the people. And then I just picked the first 7 people because I figured I can't really fit 8, but I'll find a way to fit 8. And that seems like a good number. So I'll just do that. And then like I organized people a little bit, right? So there were some people on the list who I knew. And then there was many, many, many people who I did not know. Because I'd been a model, had another Instagram that had more of a following. And in that, there's, I guess, some sense of like parasocial relationship where there were people who felt like they knew something about me and I didn't really know anything about them. Somebody came and they were like, it popped up on my For You page. And I was like, that sounds fun. And I was like, how? It was 3 days ago, right? Like the powers of the internet. So yeah, that happened. And then I was like, okay, we'll just do it in 2 weeks. And so I sent an email to those 7 people and I said, you want to do this? And everybody wrote back and said, yeah, great. And it was free. I just said, bring a bottle of wine, because people like to bring something. They don't, and it kind of like levels the playing field in a way where you like everybody contributed something. That's awesome. And also wine is expensive. So I didn't want to shoulder that burden. Yeah. And then they came to my house and we did it. And then we did it over and over and over again.
So you also said, and I know this is changing now, but in the beginning, you didn't charge anybody to come. They would bring a bottle of wine, or maybe they would bring a dessert or cookies. I don't know what they brought. But so they felt like they were contributing, but you also wanted to do the cooking. So I want to hear why you wanted to do the cooking. And then I also want to hear how this first dinner went, because obviously it went well and then you kept doing it. And then you did implement some rules, like people are not allowed to know each other, which I think is a very cool rule. But in the first one, I think a couple people knew each other.
Suggestions.
Okay.
Not rules.
Suggestions.
Suggestions. The first supper club was the best. It was euphoric. It was, I think that like, how do I explain this? High risk, high reward, right? So the first one was like, holy shit, it might not be okay. There's so many ways that this could go wrong, right? I think every single one has made me have this realization, but most of all the first one, because the part I was nervous about, sure, you want the food to be good and you want it to work out and the timing to be okay and people not to be starving at 9:45 p.m., right? But like, yeah. The thing I was worried about is like, how will these people get on? Are people going to feel awkward? Am I going to feel awkward? Are we all going to have enough to say, right? It's about connection. And the reason people behave how they do is because of all of those anxieties, right? They're the things that get in the way. And it wasn't like that at all. Every single dinner party I've done, but especially that one, because I was so worried about it. People show up with their absolute best and most human efforts at connection. And it is like so inspiring, reaffirming of life and humanity, and like that we're all looking for the same thing,
Yeah.
Like people came with like joy and humor and curiosity and intrigue and bravery. People are so brave to come to this thing. This thing is insane. I recently was invited to something very similar to my supper club, and I was like, I'm so nervous. This is crazy. I'm like, just gonna walk in there and I don't know anybody. And I count myself as a fairly confident person, right? I think it just completely inspired me for how incredible people are to each other,
And I think it's really interesting and beautiful that your experience has been, over and over again, that people show up their best selves. And I do like this word bravery because, not everybody would be willing to do this, to come to a dinner party where they don't know anybody or they know very few people. But I think most of the time now people don't know each other at all. And they usually only come once. So for this first one, when people come in the door, you might not even know what they look like, right? You have their name or...
and I think this is like a really funny experience because like I was saying about that like parasocial thing, I've had that a lot because when you're a model, people know what you look like and you have your name attached to your photo, right? So when you show up to work, it was the same experience as when I'm opening my front door and people are like, hi. And I'm like, who are you? I don't know who you are. And I'm having to say, I'm Katy, to kind of prompt them to get them to introduce themselves, right? Because it's like, my sister honestly is like screaming. internally constantly at me being like, yeah, I'm just gonna go and do this. She's like, stop letting strangers into your house. But yeah, yes, I opened the door. Okay, the first one was the biggest lesson in what you are literally capable of doing as a human with two hands. I guess I'm jumping back to the why was it free? Why did I want it to be free? I don't want the pressure of providing a service that comes with an expectancy that aligns with a price tag, right? I didn't want that. I wanted it to be firstly accessible to anybody who wanted to come. I was in the hugely privileged position that I could afford to do this as my hobby, right? I do truly believe that like people spend money on their hobbies every month, and if you go to ceramics class or you go rock climbing, like you spend $300 on doing that a month. And at the time I was like capable of doing that. So I didn't need to ask for help, and that made it more accessible. And also I didn't want the pressure of being like, if I mess it up and it's not perfect or everything I want it to be or everything you want it to be, well, you can't really complain about it, right? I think that allowed it to be an experience of human connection rather than I'm going to a dinner with the expectation of like a culinary experience, right? It's like the holistic thing. And I would give anything to be able to continue to do it that way. Right now I'm back in school and on a student budget, that's not possible. But yeah, that was my reasoning behind it being free. The first one I tried to do a hot appetizer, make everybody a drink as they arrived, like a cocktail, not like pour them some wine. And I've forgotten the part where like nobody knows anybody else, so I have to introduce everybody and facilitate the terrifying part of the evening, right? So we learned a lot of like logistical lessons in the first one, and also that some understanding of that like emotional experience of what it was like for people to come and where people were going to feel uncomfortable and when during the evening, right, I would need to facilitate. So that's how the first one went.
And then, so tell us what else you learned other than the food part, which is super important. And I talk a lot about that because I will get at the end, I ask everybody the same 5 questions, and one of them is about entertaining. And I feel like so many people fear entertaining because in their mind, the food has to be perfect. Like everything has to be perfect. And that's so just not true. Like it's really about the spending time together and the gathering, and that being present, I think, is actually the most important thing. But I know that you, in subsequent supper clubs, had or have cards with like icebreakers or questions or things like that, which you probably didn't have the first one, or maybe you did.
Yeah, I guess like we kind of have to go back to the fact that like I'd probably been thinking about cute little ideas for, 7 years. Like, oh, what flowers would I put on the table if I had a restaurant? Like that kind of stuff, And also like have the tremendous inspiration of like, I live in New York City. Like there's 3 kabillion restaurants. Like I've had a lot of wonderful food experiences. I've had a lot of wonderful hospitality experiences. But this feels relevant that another driver of the supper club is I was sick of small plates. I was so sick of paying like $29 for 3 pieces of tuna on a small plate and being like, I'm starving. I'm so hungry. But also I would go and have these experiences at these beautiful restaurants, and I'd be like, I'm not an amazing chef in my opinion. Like I don't have that skill, I don't have that education, but I was like, oh, this is inspiring, and I could turn this dish into like a family style meal that feels more casual, feels more accessible, but like I could do that. I like that combo of honey nut squash and roast chicken, which is presented to me in like this perfect confit tartlet. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to roast the chicken,
So you have icebreaker cards, and you maybe did have them from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I could see why you would plan for that, because especially because people are strangers. I actually think it's a beautiful idea for any dinner party.
Yeah.
Because my experience is that people, and maybe this is less true with strangers, but when you know people unless you are invited to a specific subject, you tend to stay on safe subjects that are tend to be more superficial. And it's
100%.
easier to get to know somebody if there's actually a question. So I've been to dinner parties, and I also do it at my house, where either it's like one question for the whole table, or everybody has a separate question and then they have to answer it, over dessert or like whatever. And I have found it really remarkable how vulnerable people are willing to be if asked and pushed just a little bit, and then how much more you get to know them and understand about them.
Exactly. Like while you were talking, all I'm thinking about is like what actually feels like connection, question mark. Like, is it what do you do? What did you do today? Or is it like, but what do you really think and feel about the world we live in,
Yeah.
And totally, I am like a huge fan of all of these. I mean, I'm literally looking at a set right now on my desk.
I have
these,
that
like,
one.
You
That's
do.
a great one.
That's so funny. Like the Esther Perel and the We're Not Really Strangers and all that stuff. Like, I'm English. And I am like a very expressive English person. It's not super common culturally. And it's seen as like really intense to ask somebody a question like that, right? And so the cards are a combination of like, this can be frivolous conversation that probably tells me a little more about you than like, what do you do? Where do you live? Right? That's what happens at cocktail hour. We do standing cocktail hour, and there's little snacky apps so that it feels a bit more casual and people can do that. Where do you live? How long have you been in New York? Let's get comfortable, right? And then there's cards that are what makes a New Yorker, or if you were mayor for the day, what rule would you implement, right? It's light, and yet you're telling me what is important to you, like what you value. Then you can segue into what you value. Why do you value that, right? And then sometimes there's like deeper, darker ones. And also sometimes you put in front of somebody a very light-hearted question. What would you do in the zombie apocalypse? And your guest will surprise you with answers, right? I had a guest come one time, and straight up in answer to that question, she was like, I'd throw myself out the window. She was like, I'm not doing it. I was like, okay, it's not for you, like there's opportunity. Like you said, once you show a little interest and give permission to be like, come on, you can dive in the water. Like, it's okay. We're all going to do it. Yeah. You get to know people much quicker.
Do you think that the fact that people don't know each other is an important ingredient to that aspect of being vulnerable, or the experience overall? Because that is something that you have stuck with. Like I'm sure you could invite friends to every one of your supper clubs, but you don't do that.
I don't. If 7 strangers want to come, I want 7 strangers to come at this point. At the beginning, I would have a friend or two, really for my sister and for my safety.
Right.
And also, there's levels of safety. Yes, my physical safety. And secondly, like, is this going to bomb?
Yeah.
Is it all going to be on me? Like, and if you have a friend who you're like, I trust your charisma, right? I trust that you can hold a conversation with somebody. It feels like a support to me. I love a little anonymity. And I love the feeling of being like, I can kind of be whoever I want to be, and maybe I'll never see you again, right? And then also, I think that actually what Supper Club became, in terms, not of branding, like I didn't do it intentionally, but I think the thing that got passed on past those first iterations of the Supper Club was like, oh, it's a place to make friends. And I think that that's a different version of a person that shows up. I think it is a bit more guarded, and I think it is a bit more calculated to be like, I'm looking actively for connection that I would like to be sustained. And I think I see a different version of how people show up to that dinner party than to the original ones where it was just like, I'm in it for one night of an experience and let's rip it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Let's say you had the supper club concept, the strangers getting together, but there weren't food, do you think it would be a totally different experience and less of a connection?
My first thought is like, why would we ever do anything without food? Why would we? I'm like trying to like wrap my head around, will there be snacks at least? Yes, it would definitely be different because I would be a consistent participant, I think. And I think that that would be a really big difference for me. And any change in the dynamic changes the outcome, right? As it stands, I create a scenario where the kind of train can keep going on the track without me driving it while I cook. So that would be different if we didn't have food. I would sit down and yeah, that's a practical answer, but I think in like a spiritual sense, distraction isn't the right word, but in having like, it's both the thing that we share and the thing that keeps the attention at like a less intense level, the attention on you at a less intense level.
I think that makes sense. Well, first of all, we have this expression breaking bread together. And I think there is something deeply connective about sharing food.
Totally. And just like what we were just talking about, which is like, can you be vulnerable? How vulnerable do you feel safe being? What version of yourself can show up? If everyone's also kind of like intermittently reaching for a pita bread or like, you know, spooning, like dropping a pomegranate seed out their mouth, it's humanizing. Yeah. And it's like, it's a little bit of that like breath between here's all of my vulnerability and is everybody just staring straight at me, and what if I change my mind, and what if I need a beat to like recalibrate, or like what if we need to find humor here to like relieve some tension. I think that the food is the reliever of the tension.
Interesting. Well, we talked about why you wanted to do this. Is that the same reason participants had? Like the human connection and, you know, like fundamentally, I mean, you obviously also wanted to create this whole experience with the table setting and the food, and people are just coming into that, but they're coming for a reason. I mean, many people would see that Instagram post and say, no, thank you. Right. So have you talked to them, and, or is it just obvious throughout these evenings? Like, what are people hoping to get, and are they getting it?
Whatever it is you're looking for, I hope I can offer it to you. I say often, this only works in New York City. And I don't mean that in its like literal sense. But what I have come to understand from my 12 years of being here is like, it's a special type of person that says, you know what, hell yeah, that life's for me. This is hard work, you know? It's so intense. It's like overwhelming to most people when non-New Yorkers visit 4 days and they're like, woof. And I think there's something that is like, you're drawn to this place. And again, it doesn't have to be New York specifically. Like, potentially I could take it to London, who knows? But I think there is something in like the culture where people are like up for it. They're up for an experience. I think people are looking for connection. And again, I think the timing was integral to its success. I also know from feedback from other people that there's something in my storytelling capacity that people find engaging. I couldn't tell you any more than that, but it's feedback that I get a lot. And I wonder if the way I communicate what this is and how I do my best to make it feel accessible and not intimidating makes it feel like a less crazy thing to participate in than it actually is.
I mean, of course, we all sort of gravitate towards people who make us feel comfortable or warm or included or belong or all of those things. But somebody has to have been looking for that to, one, find you and then say yes, right? Or put themselves out there. And I believe very, very strongly we all need each other. Like, we all need human connection. But some of us, I think, are more aware that we need that, or that maybe we're lacking something there and we want to try to fill that than others. And so I guess I'm really wondering, like, are all of the people who, not are they all extroverts? I'm guessing you have introverts and extroverts, but are they all sort of like, is it plain from the way that they interact that they took this chance because they felt like they were missing something in terms of human connection? Like they wanted to find something in this evening that they could take with them in their lives.
Yes. Yes, it's clear. It's evident. There's two types of people in that respect. One of them is an introverted, more shy, aware that they would like a long-term connection. More people, more connections. And they're here to find that. And then there's people who probably are more how I would describe myself, which is I'm like, what is there to lose? I'll go have that experience, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's not super common to go to someone's house and have a meal and see what it's all about, you know, see how the evening unfolds. And I think that that's a little adventure. So I think that people are either looking for a friend or they're looking for an adventure.
And I know that there have been, and you may have some idea how many people you've hosted at these supper clubs. That would be interesting to know. But I know you're not in touch with most of these people. I mean, like you said, they will always remember you because they come to your house, you're cooking the meal, you're orchestrating the whole thing. But are there some stories that you've heard or seen follow-ups or people DM'd you after a supper club, maybe long after, to say, like, these were the lasting effects, or here's what I took with me? Or because I am sure that has happened. I'm not sure that they've reached back out to you, but I'm sure that that's happened.
Yeah. Long term, I don't have an anecdote for you, but this conversation is really challenging my English modesty. You know, you're asking me why people want to hang out with me and my idea, and I'm like, oh God, it's not me. It's nothing to do with me. But I am always like incredibly humbled by people's response. The fact that people go home and write me a card, put it in the mail to my apartment, I'm like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever. You know, people bring me a hosting gift sometimes. And I think the thing that really speaks to me is that people want to come back. That, honestly, I could weep. I've had guests who ask me to cook for their birthday and cook for their bridal shower and cook for their wedding. And I don't, like I said, I don't actually think it's solely because of my food. I think that it is because there's I try to put warmth into everything that I do. And not just warmth, but fun and ease. And I think one of the most beautiful things about cooking for someone else is give me a night where I don't have to think about a thing. I don't even have to order off a menu. You just give it to me and I just eat the things I like and don't eat the things I don't. That's amazing. I love that. It's, offering people a break from reality and the stresses and pressures of adult life is really a gift,
Huge gift. I mean, I think the evening is a gift, and it's, one of the other questions that I ask, and you'll give us your answer later, is about a special object from your life, because I really, really firmly believe objects are just vessels for memories, and you are basically creating a capsule of a memory in this evening. And I would not at all be surprised if people have very powerful memories that last their whole lives. I mean, it would be super interesting if you could put out on Instagram and ask people to share, what did this evening mean to you? When did you come? How long has this feeling lasted? What does it do for you? What does it do for you today? You took a break from hosting supper clubs for a while because you started going back to school to become a therapist. So tell us a little bit about that. And I think all of these things obviously overlap substantially.
Sad. The way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? So the way I approach supper club is with this desire to be who are you? Why are you like that? What's your experience? And it's about connection. And that's what therapy is. Plus a desire to help, you know? It's about self and other with the goal of like finding more connection to yourself, to others, and more ease, you know? That's sure, there's also pathology, but whatever. How do those two things intertwine? I am almost finished with my first year of a 2-year program, and it's like very intense and very hands-on and honestly really challenging. And yeah, the main reason I stopped Supper Club or paused Supper Club is because I just can't keep up with producing a dinner that I am proud of. That's a large component for me, is that like, this is fun for me. I like it. I don't want to throw dinner together. That's not the point. It's not about creating more labor for myself. It's about, I'm in flow state when I can cook for 3 days and like putz around my kitchen, like making a roulade, you know? I don't want it to feel like a stress and a pressure. And I couldn't guarantee both of those things and doing all of the things that I'm trying to do to the level that I want to do them at. And so I did pause. As soon as something is a success, people want you to monetize it. And I resisted that for a long time until it kind of felt dumb, right? I was being offered opportunities to cook for money and create these kind of events for money. And so I did that for a while, and not the same experience, you know.
So, but now you've come back to it because I saw you posted on Instagram you were doing another supper club. So are you going to do it like less frequently? And what, from your almost 1 year of school, is there anything you've taken from that that you're incorporating?
Oh my gosh. One thing. I mean, I'm on summer break, or I will be. I'm actually surprised. I am supposed to do one in like 10 days, but I do not have the interest that I was hoping for. And I'm curious about that. I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe Supper Club won't be back. Maybe I've gone through all the crazy adventurous people and they're all like, we're done. Or maybe the algorithm doesn't like me anymore because I don't use Instagram very often. So we'll see. I think therapy school, as I fondly refer to it, just really teaches you to hold curiosity as the highest value when it comes to connection, right? It is about undoing your assumptions and everybody's experience, regardless of how close you are to each other in all the different ways, is completely unique to them, right? And so I think that assumption is the barrier to connection, and curiosity is its, you know, the key to every lock, really. It's being like, even if I think I know, let me hear it in your own words. And oftentimes it's not what you think you know, you know?
Well, I couldn't agree more. My brand is Amatand, which is French for to take care of your soul. I think I'm highly focused on less judgment, more curiosity. I just feel like it's hindering our ability to connect, and we need it. Like, we literally all need each other, and we seem to forget that a lot. I've always said that I have 2 boys, and I've said this to them all their lives. Like, you have to love yourself before you can love other people. And I think many of us don't love ourselves. So it's this like, we've got to do that. And then we've got to, and a lot of, I think the assumption and judgment comes from that like lack of loving ourselves. If we really allowed ourselves to like go there and analyze it, you know?
Totally. I mean, I guess what I've learned is that the way we understand ourselves is relational. You don't pop out the womb like with a personality, actually. You really come to build who you are based on how you are responded to. We learn so much about ourselves and our worth and how to be in relationship before we can even talk, right? And that one of my professors said this to me, and this blew my mind for weeks. But it was that every aspect of our personality is a defense mechanism. And that is kind of difficult to wrap your head around because it's a pretty niche thing to say now, I'm realizing. But what I mean by that is like, we work really hard at protecting ourselves from not being understood in the way that we want relationally, right? It's like, well, if I say that, will you get it? Can I trust you? Are you like me, right? A lot of what we're doing all the time is kind of that assessment. And there's a lot of different responses to how you navigate those questions, in being shy, in overcoming, in, right? Like being in control of the situation. I think once you start thinking psychologically, which I've kind of always done because I went to undergrad 15 years ago for psychology, but this is like a whole other level of like how you view people. It's not the same. Let me be clear. I think as soon as you say I'm a therapist, people are like, oh my God, are you psychoanalyzing me? And I'm like, no, but I am noticing the way that you present yourself, you know, because it's interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying that, I was wondering, again, I've had wonderful experiences with people I know with deeper questions around the dinner table, but I wonder if there's an element of safety that coming to your supper club as a stranger to other people, that you don't have the baggage of reacting to the world in a certain way, because we don't even know each other and we may never see each other again. And therefore I can answer this question like with my full heart and total honesty. And that is why I'm so interested to see what people tell you their like the lingering aspects of the experience are, because it's an opportunity we don't actually get very often, to be in an intimate setting around a table, eating, drinking, sharing with people that we don't know and maybe we're looking for a friend and we hope they'll be a friend in the future, but we don't have to have an expectation that they will be in our lives. So we can literally be present in that space and time and just take it for what it is. And we have so much trouble as humans doing that, even though I think that is what brings us the greatest sense of purpose and joy. It's just hard for us, you know?
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions before we get to my 5 questions. Do you have a food memory that has stayed with you throughout your life? It doesn't have to be from when you were little, but it could be. I just had on a guest who worked at CalFresh, which is like the SNAP Ed program that actually is winding down, but would go into schools and like plant a garden with kids. And then he's like, some of these kids have literally, like, they've seen a jar of tomato sauce, but they've never seen a tomato, and they've never like eaten a tomato. And like this, like, you know, you see their eyes, you know, kind of like, what? This, you know?
I still feel that way when you take something that you grew and put it into your mouth immediately. I'm like, that is a magical experience. I don't have the feeling. And it is this like, I'm giddy. I am like, there is a moment that I have had in going to a fancy restaurant, in sitting on the floor in a foreign country eating food I've never had, in, you know, sitting down to campsite picnic table with friends when we've grilled whatever. And it is that like moment of like exhale after you pulled the meal together and you did all the logistics and you made it work, and everybody is already moving. There's already action at the table. Everybody's already eating and drinking, and you get to like see the image of what you created. And it's like so beautiful. All of the things that we're seeking in connection, warmth, love, joy, laughter. And I'm like, oh my God, I did it. You know, that feeling has been prevalent way, way, way back. I think I felt that when I was a kid and 25 of us sat at my grandma's table and my grandma fell through the wicker chair. Her granny big bum her whole life. And she's got legs up in the air, like absolutely stuck in this wicker chair. There's a million stories and examples I could give for you, but that's the feeling that is resonating in every single one of the memories.
And another guest in this series who's a food historian and wrote a book about our different cultures around the world, around the dinner table, and one of the things that unfortunately was a through line was that the family dinner is dying. And I hope that people listen to this and they realize, like, we cannot let that happen. There's so much we learn and that we gain sitting around the table eating food together.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be with your family. It's
Correct.
okay if you don't like your family, make a new one. That's okay.
Right. Exactly. This is maybe too difficult to question, and maybe you've actually just answered it. But after hosting so many meals, what do you believe is the deepest purpose of gathering around the table? And what have you gained? What is the deepest thing that you've gained in offering Supper Club?
Food is love. That's it. That's the purpose. I conceptualize the idea of Supper Club with an immense fear of being lonely and of being alone. And immediately after the first one, I can't tell you how rich I feel. I thought I wanted new friends. And in 7 people coming to my house and me being like, wow, I'm obsessed with all of you, I'm like, oh, I don't actually have time for more friends. I have so many. What it has given me is pride in myself and all of the effort and work and focus that I've put into making my own connections that are deep and lasting and meaningful, because that is for me the point of life. That's why we're here, is just to be here and connect with each other and love each other and learn about each other. And this experience has reflected back to me all the ways in which my life supports that. And I am like overflowing with gratitude and pride that that is my life.
Okay, let's jump into the 5 questions. So,
Okay.
as we explore in my brand, Amatand, objects can hold a lot of meaning for us. They can tie us to the past, enable us to be more present, and sometimes even take us into the future, although nobody's given me a future object. So can you share an object, whether you still have it or not, that holds a lot of meaning for you, and tell us why?
Okay, as you can probably tell, I'm terrible at like picking the one thing, you know? Pick your favorite movie, pick your favorite meal. I'm like, no, don't pin me down. But I can answer this question because my siblings, for my 30th birthday, gifted me a pinky ring, a signet ring. And it's engraved with my initials because we have a huge family, but we don't really have any heirlooms. We don't have things that are like passed down. And I am nostalgia queen. And I was thinking about it as I was like coming up to this like milestone birthday of turning 30, which is 5 years ago now. And I was like, well, how do you get them? Where do they come from? And I was like, you just have to start. And I do think that that is kind of like representative of the person that I am, is that sometimes starting feels shallow or like there's nothing to ground into, but you have to begin somewhere. And I want the deep roots, and also I'm the person that doesn't mind planting the seed. And so I treasure this piece of jewelry, not just because it holds value in a resource, but it means I get to carry my family with me everywhere I go when we live really far away. And it's a good reminder of that thing, that you can start wherever you are, whenever it feels right, growing the deep roots.
Beautiful. Can you share a favorite tradition? It could be something you did when you were a kid, something you do today. I mean, obviously Supper Club has become a tradition, but let us know why you chose it.
I think it has to be a Sunday roast.
I've had that actually. Somebody else has said that. Yeah.
So English, and like, yeah, again, like holding on to all of who you are. There's like, we're lots of different parts, and like, yeah, it's got to be a Sunday roast.
Do you do that now?
Sometimes, less often than I would like to. But when I was a kid, every Sunday.
Yeah.
We would go to a grandparent's or my mum would cook, and like every Sunday. Yeah.
So many good memories. So I ask if you're in a phase in your life where you enjoy entertaining in your home. But I guess I am curious, outside of supper club, do you like to have your friends over? Do you do that with frequency or maybe not because you're in school?
I would love to. I think, yes, I do. And I would love to. And also, I'm surrounded by people who are kind of a lot like me. So we we share the burden in a way. Mostly actually like we go to my best friend's house because she has a backyard. So that's
Okay.
the truth of it.
And
But yes.
do you potluck when you do that usually?
I'm being really honest here. I'm like, these are unfiltered responses, but like, you know, there's key players in the game who show up with the dishes.
Got it. Okay. Do you have one or two top resources? And it does not have to be related to either supper clubs or food or therapy. It could, sometimes people just share their favorite books because a lot of our listeners love to read and I love to read. So I like getting recommendations, but anything at all that either was like meaningful for you or you keep coming back to, or you love for any particular reason. It could be a book. It could be a website, a podcast, anything.
Okay. I'm an avid astrology follower.
Ooh.
And I listen to an astrology podcast every week called Ghost of a Podcast. It has helped me like surrender to the universe and relieve the responsibility I feel of like my participation in everything in a way that rivals going to therapy for many years, honestly. So I love that. The book I come back to constantly is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous.
Oh, I don't
by
know it.
Ocean Vuong. It's really beautiful, poetic prose. I'm not going to say anything else. It's a short book and it's absolutely worth a read. And I honestly listen to Mary Oliver recite her poetry probably 3 times a week. Okay.
Amazing. Last question. What do you do for yourself? You do a lot for others. Do you have a practice, a focus, a habit, or daily routine that contributes to your success and or your well-being?
I really try to get enough sleep. And I know that that sounds so lame when, like you said, you are so active in offering to others. As maybe has been evident from this conversation, I did not get enough sleep last night and I feel crazy.
No, sleep is, so important.
There was a period in my life where if you'd have asked me this question, the answer would have been that every day I found evidence of the fact that people like me for no reason. Not because I did something. It's not because I worked for it. It's because people are kind and there is good in the world and you deserve it. And I do think that that has been foundational to me being able to love and appreciate myself. And so I would encourage that in anybody who is brave enough to try.
Well, let's end there. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Katy. It's been wonderful talking with you.
You too.
Thank you.
On the Table with Ashley is presented by Amatonde, an elevated, everyday, luxury home and tableware brand with products designed to cultivate connection. You can learn more about Amatonde at ametendre.com or on Instagram at Amatonde. By subscribing to our newsletter on the Amatonde website, you'll receive updates on new episodes as well as promotions relating to Amatonde and Amatonde's products. Send us an email at reachoutanytime@amatonde.com if you have ideas for guests or series ideas you'd like to pass along. Thanks for listening.